Xie Huaishu hated me to the bone, vowing that in the next life, he would want nothing more than for us to live and die without ever crossing paths again. He arranged for me to marry a young general on the frontier, in place of the woman he loved, a marriage intended to bring good fortune to the ailing man. He wanted to see me spend my life in lonely devotion to prayer, accompanied only by the flicker of a lamp and the image of Buddha. He never imagined that in this life, I would still be the one to sit on the throne of the central palace. But the one who ascended to that supreme position was no longer him. 2 imperial edicts of marriage were issued from the palace. One was for me, the other for my half-sister, Song Qingwan. Unlike in the previous life, Song Qingwan was betrothed to Xie Huaishu, while I, the legitimate daughter of the duke's mansion, was betrothed to the young General Huo after. The eunuch read the decrees. The crowd kneeling before the duke's residence rose to their feet. "This old woman is getting on in years, and my hearing is not what it used to be," my grandmother said hesitantly. "May I ask the esteemed eunuch, did His Majesty's decree truly betroth Jin Yuan to the Huo family, and Qingwan to His Highness Prince Huai?" The head eunuch smiled. "Even if you gave this servant 10 times the courage, I would not dare to misrepresent His Majesty's decree." Everyone present was in shock. By all rights, I should have been the one to marry into the royal family, and Song Qingwan the one to be sent to the frontier. Only I remained calm, watching the scene unfold. A month ago, during an inspection tour in the south, the emperor had encountered an old Taoist priest. The priest was said to be remarkably skilled at divination, able to glimpse into the secrets of heaven. It was rumored that he had accurately predicted the 7 consecutive days of heavy rain that caused the Luo River to burst its banks. I had never heard of such a miraculous person in my previous life. Not long after the floodwaters receded, the imperial edicts for our marriages were issued. It seemed the old priest had not only foreseen the flood, but had also divined something else. I suddenly remembered a time in my past life when Xie Huaishu, drunk, had squeezed my neck, his eyes bloodshot as he stared at me. "If not for your scheming, Qingwan would not have died a tragic death in that bitter, cold land. I did not kill her then. I spared her life. That was an act of kindness," I had replied with a smile. "Xie Huaishu, what are you afraid of? I am but a weak woman. With just a little pressure, you could snap my neck." He had released me then. "Killing you would be too boring. I want you to live a life worse than death." It was only after he ascended the throne that I learned his heart had long belonged to Song Qingwan. A childhood bond, it seemed, was no match for love at first sight. In that life, Song Qingwan was widowed shortly after her marriage. Later, while trying to flee back to the capital, she was killed by bandits. After her death, a suicide note found in her possession made me the one responsible for her demise. Xie Huaishu had long hated me to the core, but to use me to secure his position on the throne. He had feigned affection and played the part of a loving husband for many years. "Song Jinyuan," he had said, speaking my name, his voice cold. "My greatest regret in this life is making a venomous woman like you my empress." In my past life, he often said his greatest regret was marrying me. If there were a next life, he would surely want nothing to do with me. And so, this time, the marriage edicts were for different people, so he had been reborn as well. Hearing the decree, Song Qingwan's eyes filled with joy. She walked to my side and whispered in a voice only I could hear, "I hear the frontier is a bitter, cold place. I wonder if a pampered young lady like you can endure such hardship." I ignored her, dusting off my dress and walking toward the courtyard. But Song Qingwan stepped in my way. "Haven't you heard, sister? The young General Huo's injuries are severe. Perhaps your marriage can bring him some good fortune," she said, unable to contain her glee, covering her mouth with her hand as she laughed. "If he dies right after you marry him, you might have to be a widow for the rest of your life." At that time, news of Huo Changfeng's grave injuries had not yet reached the capital. Xie Huaishu must have told her. I curved my lips into a smile. "Are you telling me this to make me flee the marriage?" Her eyes widened in an instant. "You wouldn't dare defy an imperial edict. This marriage with the Huo family was something Father went to great lengths to arrange for you. I never expected it would fall to me. I looked up at her. Do you know why, even though Father dotes on you so, he would want to marry you off to such a remote place? She met my cold gaze, her eyelashes trembling. Why? Why? The smile on my lips deepened. Because he was afraid he wouldn't be able to protect you. Her almond-shaped eyes widened. What do you mean by that? I smiled at her, but my voice was cold. If you don't want to die a violent death like your mother, don't provoke me. Song Qingwan's mother had originally been a maid in my mother's service. When my mother was gravely ill, she had climbed into my father's bed. My mother said that a man favoring a serving girl was no great matter, but Li Yinger was not one to be content. She came from a brothel, was beautiful, and had entered the residence with the intention of becoming a mistress. However, she had arrived just as my parents were newlyweds. My father had sent her to my mother's courtyard to serve. My mother was strict in managing her servants, and Li Yinger had long harbored resentment. Under the pretext of caring for my mother, she would have trysts with my father in the side room, letting the sounds of their passion drift into my mother's chambers. But by then, my mother had no time to deal with her. She was busy arranging a future for me before she died. My grandmother had always favored my younger brother, the legitimate son. My father was unreliable. If she were gone, there would be no one to raise me properly. At that time, the turmoil in the palace had just subsided, and the new emperor had ascended the throne with the support of his ministers. My mother's aunt, though not related to the new emperor by blood, had become the Empress Dowager. My mother wrote a letter, begging the Empress Dowager to take me into her care, but her personal attendant advised against it. The Empress Dowager is a deep and calculating woman. If the young lady grows up by her side, I fear she will also become. My aunt is the most intelligent woman in our clan. She has merely obtained the power and status she desired. If she were a man, no one would call her calculating. If Jinyuan can be under her protection, she will surely grow up safe and sound. My mother covered her mouth and coughed, blood seeping through her fingers. She simply wiped it with a handkerchief and continued to write. The candlelight flickered on her gentle face, and the ink from her brush spread. She said, "What does it matter if one is calculating? As long as one can protect oneself and achieve one's desires." When my mother passed away, I was only 2. I was taken into the palace by the Empress Dowager. On the day I returned to the Duke's residence after my coming-of-age ceremony, I asked the Empress Dowager, "Your Majesty, last month I met Yungshu, who used to serve my mother. She told me that although my mother was seriously ill, the imperial physician said she could have lived for another 2 years. Why then did she not survive? I recall the physician saying your mother's illness was incurable." The Empress Dowager's hand holding the teacup paused, and a flash of ruthlessness crossed her eyes. Perhaps one cannot fully trust the words of a physician. I have investigated. The physician who treated my mother died of old age 3 months after retiring. The servants who attended to her were either dead or sold off. And what did you find? I lowered my eyes. I could find nothing from my mother's former servants, so I apprehended one of my grandmother's attendants and used the methods of the palace to interrogate her. I learned that my mother died of a broken heart. Your father and grandmother are known for their propriety. This is how noble families are. They always avoid airing their dirty laundry. The Empress Dowager sneered, her gaze falling on me. "What do you plan to do?" I said with resolve. "A family's shame should not be made public. Your Majesty's words are enough for me." The day I returned, Attendant Zhao, who had been kidnapped by bandits, was ransomed by my grandmother and returned to the residence. Though her wounds had not yet healed, she was eager to serve my grandmother again. When I went to my grandmother's room to pay my respects, concubine Li was also there. Shortly after I went to the palace, she had given birth to Song Qingwan, and in recent years, a son as well. My father doted on her. She was dressed in fine silks, looking every bit the part of the main wife, with no hint that she was merely a concubine. Concubine Li had grown arrogant with favor, and my grandmother despised her all the more. She knelt to pay her respects, but my grandmother did not bid her to rise, instead engaging me in conversation. Soon, attendant Zhao brought in the tea. "This is the pre-rain Longjing tea the young lady brought from the palace, brewed with snow melted from plum blossoms last year." My grandmother took a sip and said to me, "This tea is truly fragrant. The things the Empress Dowager gives you are indeed the best." I held my cup and looked at Concubine Li, who was still kneeling. I said softly, "Concubine, you should try this tea as well." Only then did my grandmother allow her to rise. Concubine Li took the cup from attendant Zhao, drank 2 sips, and then set it down. Her expression was displeased. She stood and bowed to my grandmother. "Old madam, I am not feeling well. I will take my leave." My grandmother watched her go and snorted coldly. "Look at her arrogance, such fine tea, yet she acts as if she is used to it. Your father is bewitched by her. Any good thing in this residence goes straight to her courtyard." I smiled, but the warmth did not reach my eyes. "Concubine Li has borne children for the family. It is right for father to dote on her." My grandmother looked at me. "The children she bore are illegitimate. How can they compare to you and Yuanjej, the legitimate children?" Whether legitimate or not, I did not care. I only cared if anyone would stand in my brother's way and mine. When my brother was young, my grandmother spoiled him terribly. She couldn't bear to see him go to school in the snow, so he had not even begun his studies at the age of 6. I had begged the Empress Dowager for a long time to allow Song Yuan to study in the palace as a companion to the princes. I supervised his studies daily, and that is how he became the scholar he is today. The golden hairpin Concubine Li wore today was in the shape of a peony. Only the main wife can wear such a design. In the palace, such a transgression would have cost her her life, I said, setting down my teacup with a sigh. "It is only because of your tolerance, grandmother." Everyone in the residence knew of the long-standing animosity between my grandmother and Concubine Liz. Now my grandmother finally had a reason to punish her. Concubine Li knelt under the scorching sun for a full hour, only being allowed inside after my father returned. That night she was said to have cried inconsolably, and my father stayed to comfort her. As the night deepened and they were in the midst of their passion, Concubine Li suddenly bled from all 7 orifices and died violently on top of him. My father's screams echoed through the night. My mother had been driven to an early grave by their actions. Now it was retribution. It was several days before my father regained his senses. The coroner determined that Concubine Li had been poisoned. That day she had only had a cup of tea in my grandmother's room. My father did not dare to confront his mother and risk the scandal of a dysfunctional household. He could only cover it up. The relationship between mother and son grew distant. The Empress Dowager was right. This residence valued propriety above all else. My grandmother disliked Concubine Li, and by extension, her 2 children. She often cursed Song Qingwan in secret, saying her seductive looks came from her mother. My father, fearing his mother would eventually harm Song Qingwan, had worked tirelessly to arrange this marriage with the Huo family for her. Song Qingwan did not understand the meaning behind my words. She stomped her foot and said petulantly, "You are trying to scare me. Just you wait, I'll tell His Highness Prince why." The dangers of the palace were no less than those of the frontier. I wondered if Xie Huaishu could protect her this time. I couldn't be bothered with her and went straight to Song Yuan's courtyard. Song Yuan was only a year younger than me, but he seemed to be afraid of me. The moment I stepped into his study, he hurriedly opened a book. "Sister, I was just reviewing my lessons. I only had a bowl of sweet soup a moment ago." Watching his frantic movements, it was hard to imagine that this was the man who, in my previous life, had become a marquis and a prime minister, so powerful that even the Emperor Xie Huaishu had to tread carefully around him. In that life, Xie Huaishu had long been wary of him. This time, having been reborn, he would surely eliminate him without a trace. I sat down opposite him. His Majesty has decreed that I am to marry and travel to the frontier. I am unfamiliar with the journey, and I am afraid you will accompany me." "Sister, you can be afraid," he asked, looking up at me without hesitation. "If you ask me to go, I will go." But I cut him off. "Don't worry, I have a way to get you out of this residence." Song Yuan hesitated for a moment. I thought he was having second thoughts, but then he smiled. "If you don't want to marry, you could ask the Empress Dowager. Perhaps she can find you another husband. The Empress Dowager has gone to the Imperial Villa to recuperate. I don't want to disturb her with such matters," I said with a slight laugh. "Besides, it doesn't matter who I marry. Even without an imperial decree, my marriage has never been my own to decide. It wasn't just Xia Huaishu who had regrets, I did too. This life, no matter who I married, I wanted nothing more to do with him." The next day, the Huo family's procession arrived at our gate. In my previous life, it was Song Qingwan who left. This time, it was me. Years of distance had made my relationship with my father a cold one. He did not shed tears as he had when he sent Song Qingwan off. My grandmother, however, managed to squeeze out a few tears and gave me a pair of white jade bracelets. I accepted them and glanced at the translucent green jade bracelets on Song Qingwan's wrist. My grandmother, who always claimed to love me most, was a master of currying favor. I had my maid, Xiaohong, put the bracelets away and boarded the carriage. As the curtain fell, I heard my father ask the steward, "Where is Song Yuan? He has always been closest to his older sister. Why isn't he here to see her off?" "The young master came down with a high fever last night. He just took his medicine and is asleep. He said he won't be coming." Beside me, Song Yuan, dressed as a page boy, whispered, "Sister, the excuse of having smallpox can only last for half a month at most. If the grand tutor finds out, I'll surely get a caning. Don't worry. The fact that you skipped your studies to see me off is such a disgrace to the family that father and grandmother will cover it up for you. But I am only doing this because you are marrying so far away. It will be difficult for us to see each other again." Seeing his sheepish expression, I couldn't help but laugh. He looked up at me. "Sister, what are you laughing at?" I shook my head. "Nothing. It has just been a long time since I've seen you like this." In my past life, after Song Yuan entered officialdom, the innocence in his eyes vanished, replaced by a growing ruthlessness. He was the one who had supported me, helping me secure my position in the central palace. Song Yuan and I traveled at a leisurely pace, and by the time we reached Ningyuan City, the young General Huo was already dead. The general's residence was draped in white mourning cloth, and funeral banners hung low. "They hid the news from you all this way just to trick you into coming to the frontier." Song Yuan clenched his fists, his face filled with worry. "You are the legitimate daughter of the Duke. How can you suffer such a humiliation? In my previous life, I had been married to Shi Huaishu for 20 years. I knew his methods all too well. He must have concealed the news to ensure I married into the Huo family, just as Song Qingwan had in my past life." I gave a sarcastic laugh. "He overthinks things. I would rather marry a dead man than marry him." Song Yuan heard my whisper and turned to me. "Sister, what did you say?" "Nothing. Marriage isn't important. What is important is staying alive." Song Yuan sighed. "It is a good thing I came with you. Otherwise, I would have been the one to drink that poisoned soup." Just yesterday, news came from the capital. A servant in Song Yuan's courtyard had died after drinking a soup from the kitchen. His feigned illness was thus exposed. It was not in vain that I had brought him. He had escaped death. A servant from the Huo residence went to announce our arrival, and General Huo soon came out to greet us. He was gaunt with grief. "Miss Song, you should go back. As for the marriage between you and my son, I will report to His Majesty and have it annulled." I glanced at a few flustered soldiers in the memorial hall and asked softly, "Has something happened in the residence?" General Huo did not answer. I took a step forward and lowered my voice. "Has someone in the residence been poisoned? I have some knowledge of antidotes." The general's expression sharpened. "Miss Song, please follow me." He led me into a room. The moment I entered, the smell of blood hit me. On the bed lay a man, his face ashen, his lips purple. I recognized him. It was Xie Yuan. In my previous life, besides Song Yuan, the person Xie Huaishu feared most was this Prince Xu, renowned for his military achievements and a threat to the throne. A military doctor handed me a small piece of a sleeve arrow that had been removed from Xie Yuan. "This is the poisoned arrow removed from His Highness. I have temporarily suppressed the poison, but my skills are limited, and I cannot identify the poison to create an antidote. I wonder if you recognize it." I took the arrow and looked at the Deputy General. "Lin, this type of arrow has a maximum range of 60 feet. There must be a traitor within the residence. Everyone in the residence has been detained, but with His Highness poisoned, there is no time for interrogation." I walked out with the arrow. The soldiers were all waiting in the courtyard. I studied them carefully, and indeed, among them, I found a familiar face from my past life. Xie Huaishu's personal assassin, Wu Hen. Wu Hen could kill without a trace. In my past life, he had eliminated countless people for Xie Huaishu in the shadows. He walked up to him. He was calm and bowed to me. Before he could speak, I plunged the blood-stained arrow into his arm. Wu Hen's pupils constricted instantly. Everyone watched in stunned silence. "I know you are all His Highness's sworn guards," I said, stepping back and smiling at him. "Then you shall test this poison for him." The poison on the arrowhead acted quickly. Wu Hen's lips turned purple, his face pale, and he collapsed. He struggled and pulled a pill from his chest. I shouted, "He has the antidote!" Deputy General Lin swiftly snatched the pill, his expression dazed as he looked at me. I nodded. "That is the antidote. Give it to His Highness." As Lin left with the antidote, I looked at the fallen Wu Hen and frowned. "You don't mean to say you only have one dose?" Wu Hen glared at me, and blood soon trickled from the corners of his eyes. He coughed up black blood and quickly breathed his last. I never thought that Xie Huaishu's most skilled assassin would die so easily in this life. I averted my gaze and went back inside. Xie Yuan had taken the antidote, and his color was returning. He looked at me with narrowed eyes. "How did you find the assassin?" I paused. I had seen him with Prince Huai before, I thought. Given the relationship between you and the prince, he wouldn't go so far as to send someone to protect you personally, would he? Ziyuan's lips curved slightly. "Miss Song is truly clever. Thank you for saving my life." He had Deputy General Lin personally escort me out. Just as I stepped outside, Song Yuan rushed in from the courtyard, his voice trembling. "I just saw a bloody corpse being carried out. They said it was the assassin." "Sister, were you not frightened?" I was taken aback for a moment, then realized that in his eyes, I was still his frail older sister. "I am fine," the assassin was far from me. As I spoke, I caught a flicker of a twitch at the corner of Deputy General Lin's eye. General Huo's sister, Consort Xian, was Xie Yuan's birth mother. 12 years ago, after she passed away, Xie Yuan was exiled to Ningyuan City by the emperor and had never returned to the capital. Everyone in the capital knew he was the least favored prince, but he was the last remaining blood relative of the Huo family. General Huo, grateful for my saving Xie Yuan's life, treated me as an honored guest, but someone beside him whispered a reminder. His Majesty knew of the young general's death days ago, but did not issue an edict for Miss Song to return to the capital. It seems His Majesty's intention is for her to marry the young general's memorial tablet. Hearing this, General Huo roared, "Absurd. Miss Song just saved Xie Yuan's life," I said softly. "To marry into the Huo family. Even if my husband is gone, I can still live a peaceful life with their protection." Song Yuan looked at me in disbelief. "Sister, you are willing to. Are you out of your mind?" However, I set down my teacup, my tone suddenly changing. "More important than that, General, is that the assassin was Prince Huai's man. If he ascends the throne, I fear there will be no future for Prince Xu or the Huo family. General Huo's eyes narrowed. You mean, Song Yuan quickly covered my mouth. My sister is just a frail woman. Please do not take her foolish words to heart, General. I pushed his hand away, gave him a look, and continued. I mean that there is a traitor in your residence. The most urgent matter is to investigate thoroughly. Prince Huai is a sinister man. After he ascends the throne, who knows what false accusations he will bring against you? General Huo understood. I will immediately have my men investigate. I took the opportunity to push Song Yuan forward. My brother is not only intelligent, but also meticulous. Perhaps he can be of assistance. General Huo nodded. Then I will have to trouble young Master Song. As Song Yuan bowed and left, he whispered in my ear. So that is what you meant, sister, I thought. You thought what? Song Yuan pouted. Nothing. I sneered inwardly. Did he think I was trying to incite the Huo family to rebel? To have Shi Yuan compete with the legitimate heir Shi Huaishu? For the throne, such things are not spoken of openly. They are, of course, instigated through subtle means. In my past life, the illustrious Huo family, with its generations of officials, was completely ruined after a single battle. The soldiers sent to request reinforcements were killed. General Huo and his 5,000 elite troops fought for 7 days and nights, dying under the swords of tens of thousands of enemy soldiers. Zi Huaishu seemed to have known this in advance and had sent people to Ningyuan City to bring Song Qingwan back to the capital. But Song Qingwan, having taken the family's wealth, died at the hands of bandits on her way back. Zi Huaishu's men only found her body when he confronted me with the resentful suicide note found on her. News of General Huo's death had not yet reached the capital. I wondered then how he could have known the situation at the border in advance. Unless it was all his scheme. Following my suggestion, Song Yuan began his investigation with the assets of the soldiers under General Huo's command. He soon discovered that the mother of one of the general's trusted men, a man from a poor background, owned a mansion in the capital. Under interrogation, the man confessed that the mansion was a gift from Prime Minister Liu. Prime Minister Liu was Shi Huaishu's maternal grandfather. In my past life, to eliminate his rivals and hasten Shi Huaishu's ascension, the Prime Minister had plotted the death of a meritorious official like General Huo. In the years following the general's death, the border fell, and Shi Huaishu was forced to cede territory and sue for peace. If not for Shi Yuan's later hard-fought battles, which pushed the enemy back 300 miles, Shi Huaishu's empire would have been at the mercy of others. General Huo stared at the blood-stained confession, ready to execute the traitor on the spot. I gave Song Yuan a look. He stood up and advised, General Huo, if you kill him now, you risk alerting the enemy and may not uncover other traitors in your midst. If you spare his life, you can control what information he sends back. I looked at Song Yuan and saw the shadow of the shrewd Prime Minister Song from my past life. Truly a man I had personally cultivated. At that moment, I didn't realize that my expression was being watched by Shi Yuan, who was sitting opposite me. The smile on my lips had not yet faded when my eyes met his. A look of scrutiny. He curved his lips and asked, as I recall in the palace, Miss Song was always most fond of the second imperial brother. Now, my heart sank. Shi Huaishu and I had been childhood friends. Everyone knew I was in love with him. But now, I was suddenly his mortal enemy. I couldn't very well explain to Shi Yuan that it was because I had been reborn, could I? Just then, General huffed. Miss Song understands the greater good. She would not be swayed by such childish affections. I suddenly sat up straighter. After the banquet, Song Yuan thought for a moment, then walked quickly to my side. Everyone used to say that you would marry Prince Huai. I always thought you loved him. Now it seems that is not the case. I smiled, ready for him to praise my understanding of the greater good. But then I heard him say, could it be that the one you admire is His Highness, Prince Su? My foot slipped, and I almost fell down the stone steps. I do not. I turned and glared at him, only to see Shi Yuan standing not far away, looking in my direction. I froze, then quickly ran off. Song Yuan chased after me. "Sister, if not, then why are you running?" By the time I reached my room, my heart was pounding in my throat. It took several glasses of water to calm myself. I had thought that even with our past entanglement, I could face Shi Yuan as a stranger in this life. My mind was in turmoil, and I didn't fall asleep until late. In a daze, I dreamed of my past life. By then, Shi Huaishu had secured the throne and made me his empress, a virtuous and gentle empress, but a neglected one. I had helped him reach the pinnacle of power, but somewhere along the way, our youthful love had turned into the coldness of strangers. Shi Huaishu's favorite concubine resembled me, with a personality as lively as mine had once been. Everyone said that he still had feelings for me. I found it laughable. I wasn't even dead, and he had already found a replacement. The replacement, emboldened by his favor, had been disrespectful to me. I had her kneel at the palace gate. In less than half an hour, a pool of blood formed beneath her. The imperial physician said she had miscarried. Shi Huaishu was furious and sent me to the Buddhist hall to copy sutras for a month. It was then that I discovered the palace's Buddhist hall was a place of great peace and tranquility. When I couldn't sleep, I would often go there to rest. One quiet night, I was dozing at a desk when a noise from behind a screen woke me. "Your Majesty, I have confirmed that concubine Lan was not pregnant. She bribed the physician to frame the empress." "I know," Shi Huaishu said, his gaze fixed on an unnamed memorial tablet before the Buddha statue, his voice cold. "I deliberately sent her here to copy sutras, to make her kneel before Qingwan's tablet every day and atone. If not for her, Qingwan would not have died a tragic death in that barbarian land." Qingwan. That unnamed tablet was for Song Qingwan. I realized then that concubine Lan's resemblance was not to me, but to Song Qingwan. After Song Qingwan's death, Shi Huaishu had confronted me with her suicide note. He had believed my explanations. He had even comforted me, saying he knew me, and that I could never be as cruel as the letter described. So his trust had been a lie. I had almost forgotten about Song Qingwan, but it turned out that the long-dead woman was the one who held his heart. Shi Huaishu asked Wu Hen, "Is everything prepared?" "It is all ready, Your Majesty, but no matter how much you despise her, she is still the Empress. To do this might damage Your Majesty's reputation. Just be discreet." If she hadn't threatened her father to send Qingwan to the frontier, Qingwan would not have lost her innocence and been violated to death. Shi Huaishu's voice was sinister, his teeth clenched. "I will make her taste that same humiliation. After so many years of marriage, he was going to use such a despicable method to kill me." I hid behind the screen, a chill running through me, my limbs stiff for a long time. Later, Wu Hen could not find an opportunity in my chambers and had to act during the Mid-Autumn Festival banquet. At the banquet, I switched the drugged wine with Shi Huaishu's cup, which he then awarded to the newly victorious Shi Yuan. Shi Yuan, unable to hold his liquor, went to a side hall to rest. I saw the unnatural flush on his face and knew something was wrong. Before returning to my chambers, I slipped into the side hall. I took out the antidote I carried and was about to give it to him when he suddenly opened his eyes. He grabbed my wrist. The heat of his palm seared through my sleeve, and the air itself seemed to grow hot. I looked at him and whispered, "The wine you drank was drugged by Shi Huaishu for me. This is the antidote." He frowned, his voice hoarse. "Then, where is the antidote?" The pill in my hand had fallen to the floor when he moved, and I didn't know where it had rolled. My voice trembled. It fell." Ji Yuan took a deep breath. "If you run now, you might still have a chance." I took 2 steps back, then stopped and returned to him. I wrapped my arms around his shoulders and looked up at him. "If I run, I will truly have no chance of survival." Ji Yuan's eyes were dark, filled with a pained look. He didn't understand what I meant, and there was no time to think. His hand tightened around my waist. He lowered his head and kissed me fiercely. The night was deep, and dew dripped onto the peonies outside the window. I was thrown onto a soft couch. Shi Yuan grabbed my ankle and pulled me into a wave of heat. It was not until dawn that I dragged my exhausted body back to my own chambers. By then, the guard who was supposed to defile me had become a bloody corpse, carried out of the palace. Ixi Huaishu sneered at me. Song Jinyuan, after committing such a shameless act, how can you still have the face to sit on the throne of the empress? I looked down at my freshly painted nails and smiled. It was only after trying with someone else that I realized Your Majesty's skills in bed are rather lacking. Zi Huaishu's face turned green. He had come to humiliate me, but I had turned the tables on him. In my previous life, Shi Yuan never married. Everyone thought he was averse to women. No one knew that every few days I would disguise myself as a palace maid and sneak out to his residence. Besides our trysts, I also told him the truth about General Huo's death, fanning the flames of discord between him and Shi Huaishu. Shi Yuan held great military power. The more Shi Huaishu feared him, the more desperately he would try to consolidate his own power. It was at this time that Song Yuan rose through the ranks. To maintain stability in his court, Shi Huaishu became more and more dependent on the Song family's influence. He dared not move against me rashly. All he could do was give me the cold shoulder. But concubine Lan, lacking foresight, saw my fall from favor as an opportunity to eliminate me and take my place. She hid arsenic in her fingernails and put it in the bowl of bird's nest soup she brought me. I took the bowl, walked up to her, and sighed. Concubine Lan seems clever, but this soup is lacking. Her voice trembled. If Your Majesty finds it unsatisfactory, I will make another bowl. From a distance, Shi Yuan's intense gaze, which had been fixed on me, slowly moved away. I smiled. Even if it is not good, it would be a waste not to drink it. Concubine Lan sighed in relief. I continued. Then I shall award it to you. She was stunned before she could react. I grabbed her chin and forced the entire bowl of soup down her throat. She soon foamed at the mouth and collapsed. Me personal maid rushed forward, grabbed her hand, and seeing the poison in her nails, shouted, Concubine Lan tried to poison Her Majesty. I looked up at Shi Huaishu. Your Majesty, this crime warrants the execution of her entire clan, does it not? At the banquet, everyone who had just seen me force-feed the concubine now looked at me with horror. Only Shi Yuan leisurely sipped his wine. I had publicly killed Shi Huaishu's favorite concubine. He looked at me with bloodshot eyes, as if he hated me to the bone. But the evidence was irrefutable. He could not punish me and could only feign comfort. Receiving his hollow comfort, the fear in my eyes vanished. I stood up, glanced at concubine Lan's body being carried away, and said softly to him, Doesn't Your Majesty have a fondness for the dead? I imagine you must be even more fond of concubine Lan now. The eunuch said he had a high fever and was cursing me in his sleep. That night, I was pressed against the bed by Shi Yuan. He held my chin, forcing me to look at him. Was I also a part of your scheme? He asked, his deep, cold eyes glinting in the moonlight. You set me against Shi Huaishu to support your own family, so he couldn't touch you. With you, I can survive, so you are my life. I rested my hands on his shoulders and whispered in his ear, If one day Shi Huaishu truly wants to kill me, will you save me? The coldness in Shi Yuan's eyes spread, and his movements suddenly became fierce, shattering my breath. After a long time, I heard him say with a cold laugh, Of course not. Waking from the dream, I let out a long sigh. In my past life, Shi Yuan was so cruel to me even in bed. In this life, he would surely be even colder. As I pondered how to deal with the reborn Shi Huaishu after returning to the capital, I opened the door and saw Shi Yuan standing under the pear tree in the courtyard, looking in my direction. A gentle breeze blew, and white blossoms fell like snow. I noticed the petals on his shoulder and frowned. How long have you been standing here, Your Highness? Were you waiting for me? He seemed taken aback for a moment. "You saved my life, Miss Song. It is my duty to escort you safely back to the capital." I pursed my lips. "Actually, I am not as noble as General Huo claims. I saved your life so that one day you might save mine." Xion asked, confused. "Why would Miss Song need her life saved?" I was silent for a moment, then began to fabricate a story. "I once hurt someone dear to Xie Huaishu. He is a vindictive man. If I do not have some protection, I fear I will die at his hands." Miss Song is honest. "So when Song Yuan said last night that I admired you, it was not true. I was just trying to use you. In my past life, I had used Xie Yuan for a lifetime to fight against Xie Huaishu. This time, my conscience had gotten the better of me. I didn't want to deceive him anymore. But Xie Yuan just smiled. "It matters not. As long as you know that I admire you, that is enough." I stared at him, stunned. The Xie Yuan of my past life was a menacing figure. I had never seen him smile so gently. It was not until he left that I came back to my senses. Did Xie Yuan just say he admired me? Why would he admire me? I asked Song Yuan in the carriage on our way back to the capital. He thought for a moment. "Don't all the stories say that a life saved is a life owed in marriage?" I blinked. "Isn't it usually the woman who offers herself in marriage? Why should such things be divided by gender?" Song Yuan pondered, then said seriously, "If you could marry Prince Su, it would not be a bad thing. His Majesty has always favored the legitimate heir, Xie Huaishu. If he ascends the throne," I sneered, "then he could just wipe us both out in one go." As I finished speaking, Xie Yuan's voice came from outside the carriage. "Rest assured, I will not let him sit on the throne." Hearing his voice, my ears instantly burned. I didn't dare to speak again until the sound of his horse's hooves had faded into the distance. Did he hear everything we said? Is he going to rebel for me? "Have you not heard the poem, sister? What is love? That it makes one pledge life and death." "Life and death, surely not." "Xie Yuan arrived in the capital 2 days ahead of us," Song Yuan asked. "Is he going to the palace to ask for your hand in marriage? The old Taoist the emperor met said I was a bad omen and would bring ruin to the nation," I said with a wry smile. "How could the emperor possibly agree to let me marry into the royal family? What if he kneels and refuses to rise, threatening to die for it?" That is not the Xie Yuan I know. After Song Yuan and I returned to the Duke's residence, everything had changed. Although General Huo had requested to annul our marriage, the story of the Taoist priest's prophecy had spread throughout the capital. There were even rumors that I had brought about Huo Changfeng's death. I had gone from a celebrated beauty to the family's disgrace. In contrast, Song Qingwan, whom the priest had declared to have the destiny of a phoenix, became the most honored person in the residence. Not only did she become Princess Huai, but she would soon enter the Eastern Palace as the crown princess, the future empress. During a rare visit home, she casually mentioned that Song Hui's courtyard was too dark for studying, and my courtyard was promptly given to him. I had to move to a remote corner of the residence. Song Yuan was furious. "Grandmother now scoffs every time she sees you. She used to despise Song Qingwan and Song Hui, but now they are the apples of her eye. Grandmother worships the powerful and scorns the weak. Father has always been indifferent," I said calmly. "It is not surprising that I have ended up here." Song Yuan sighed. "You are more composed than I, sister." Of course, I had lived a whole life longer than him. I had seen through all of this in my past life. "None of this is important," I said, looking at him seriously. "What is important is that Master Yi, the former head of the Hanlin Academy, has agreed to take you as a student. You must study hard." Song Yuan nodded. "Rest assured, sister, I will surely pass the examinations and win a title, so you will never have to suffer this humiliation again." He had indeed done so in my previous life, but as long as Xie Huaishu was alive, he would never be able to achieve success in this life. Not only that, but Xie Huaishu would try every means to eliminate him. Fortunately, Although Master Yi had retired, his family had been established in the south for 100 years. An Song Yuan went to the Yi family. It would be difficult for Xie Huaishu to harm him. I smiled up at him. Study hard. This time, I will protect you. After Song Yuan's carriage left, I stood at the gate for a long time. I was staring at the crabapple blossoms in the garden when my eyes met a pair of dark brooding ones. It was Xie Huaishu. Me whole body froze. Had he discovered that I had secretly sent Song Yuan to the south? It was unlikely. Song Yuan had left through the servants' gate. A man of his status would never go there. I composed myself and bowed, asking softly, "Why has your highness come here?" He frowned at me. "Why are you so cold to me?" I took a step back, lowering my eyes to hide my emotions. "Your highness has married my half-sister. I understand the need for propriety between men and women." He laughed lightly. "I know you are angry that I could not marry you, but with your current reputation, I fear you can only be my mistress." In our first meeting since our rebirth, he was already eager to humiliate me. I gave him a cold smile. "Everyone in the capital knows I am a bad omen. If I were to be with you, I fear I would bring you to utter ruin and a gruesome death." Zi Huaishu's pupils constricted, and he grabbed my wrist. "What did you say?" I shook him off forcefully. "Your Highness, please conduct yourself with dignity." I wanted nothing more to do with him and turned to leave. Unfortunately, Song Qingwan, who had come looking for him, saw the exchange. She brought her maids and stormed into my courtyard. "You harlot, how dare you try to seduce His Highness?" I sneered. "My courtyard is remote and hard to find." Yet I ran into the prince. It is clearly he who shamelessly approached me. "Are you blind, sister? You." Song Qingwan was at a loss for words. Her maid whispered in her ear, "You are of noble status. She is no better than an orphan now. There are many ways to deal with her. Why upset yourself here?" Hearing this, Song Qingwan gave me a triumphant smile. "Just you wait." At dinner, she looked at my father and said with feigned concern, "Father, sister has no one to marry. Are you not worried?" My father looked troubled. "Well," Song Qingwan sighed, "the noble families will likely look down on her. You could look for a scholar of humble origins. We cannot let her life be ruined." I realized then what she was planning. The legitimate daughter of a duke marrying a poor scholar would be the joke of the capital. She blinked and continued coquettishly, "With your help, father, her future husband would surely have a promising career." My father, given a way out, said, "It is good of you to think of your sister. I will look into it." Song Qingwan shot me a triumphant look. I said nothing, simply eating my food as if it had nothing to do with me. My grandmother looked at her with doting eyes. "You, my dear, whatever you have asked of your father, he has never refused." At her words, there was a sharp clink. I looked over and saw that Xie Huaishu's chopsticks had fallen. He was looking at Song Qingwan with a complex expression. Of course, in Song Qingwan's suicide note from my past life, she had been nothing more than an illegitimate daughter whom I could bully at will. How could she have been so favored in the family? In my past life, Xie Huaishu and I had fought to the death over this non-existent feud. But thankfully, in this life, we had no connection. Late at night, I had just taken off my hairpins when a dark figure slipped in through the window. The night wind followed, and the candle flame flickered violently before going out. Though I had experienced this many times in my past life, I was still startled. Zhiyuan's deep voice said, "Why are you living in such a remote courtyard? I almost went to the wrong place." In the moonlight, I looked at him. "You didn't happen to go into Song Hui's room, did you?" His expression turned cold. Then I would have killed him with one stroke. Just as violent as the Shi Yuan I knew in my past life, always ready to kill. I stood up, relit the candle, and poured him a cup of tea. He took the tea, his tone softening. "The things you asked me to do are done. In 2 months, you will see the results." He looked at me through the candlelight, his deep-set eyes shadowed and unreadable. He stared for a long time. I met his gaze. "Is your Highness wondering why I, like Xie Huaishu, can predict the future. His eyelids lifted slightly. If you wish to tell me, you will. If not, you have your reasons. There is nothing I am unwilling to say, but whether you will believe me. I paused. This life, for me, is merely a second chance after death. I have lived through many of these events before. The second imperial brother can also predict the future because he is like me. He has lived a second life, I said, taking a deep breath and looking at him. I have told you everything. This does not count as scheming against you, does it? He did not answer, but asked instead, in the past life you speak of, what was our relationship? What relationship? A clandestine one. I pursed my lips and mumbled, I did intend to use you for revenge, but I didn't succeed. He stared at me. What did you say? My eyes darted away. Number, nothing. As Shi Yuan was leaving, he looked back at me, a faint smile on his lips. Since you have lived a second life, then many things from the past no longer count. No longer count. What no longer counted. His gaze lingered on me for a moment. This time, I will protect you. In recent months, the Taoist priest, Xu Qing, had accurately predicted several major events in the capital, proving himself to be infallible. Not only the emperor, but the entire court believed his words. If I was not mistaken, those predictions were all things Xie Huaishu had told him, based on his memories of the previous life. But Xie Huaishu, in both lives, had always been aloof, untouched by the mundane world. He would not know that the disasters he had predicted could be altered with a little manipulation. The workers who had been building the river dikes were given extra pay and worked for another month. The Kang River burst its banks 3 days later than in the previous life. In the previous life, the East Market was struck by lightning, and a fire destroyed over 100 shops. Though it was a natural disaster by removing the iron and copper ornaments from the roofs and increasing patrols, the fire was quickly brought under control. Instead, it was the West Market that caught fire from a lightning strike. These consecutive changes were enough to ruin the priest's reputation. At this time in my previous life, it would be another 2 years before Xie Huaishu was named Crown Prince. But now, he had already moved into the Eastern Palace. The priest's help must have been a major factor. Recently, the priest's predictions had been consistently wrong, angering the emperor. Before Xie Huaishu could silence him, Shi Yuan brought him before the emperor. The priest, terrified, had lost all his former air of sage-like wisdom. He trembled, unable to speak a complete sentence. Shi Yuan presented the letters that had passed between him and Xie Huaishu. Indeed, all the priest's divinations had come from Xie Huaishu. After a moment of rage, the emperor stared at the letters and murmured, "How could the crown prince know of these disasters? I have heard that there are men among the common people who can predict natural disasters by observing the heavens," Xie Yuan said, glancing at the collapsed priest with a sneer. "But they are all mortals. How could they truly glimpse the secrets of heaven?" At that moment, I entered the hall supporting the Empress Dowager, who had returned from her recuperation. A cold smile played on her lips. The crown prince has always been favored by the emperor. The throne would have been his eventually. Why would he resort to such deceitful means to trick the emperor? Hearing this, the emperor's face darkened. That rebellious son. "I have noticed that the emperor's complexion is not as it used to be," the Empress Dowager said, her phoenix-like eyes narrowing as she looked at the servants attending to the emperor. "You slaves, how have you been serving him?" The servants in the hall knelt, and the head eunuch spoke with a trembling voice. "Your Majesty, we have been extremely careful with the emperor's daily life. But recently, he glanced at the priest being dragged out. Recently, he has been taking the elixirs offered by that old Taoist." The emperor's face turned ashen, and he slammed his hand on the table. "Summon the imperial physicians." The moment we entered the signing palace, I knelt before the Empress Dowager. She looked at me with a cold smile. "You are quite capable, aren't you? Why have you come to me?" "Before, I did not want to disturb your Majesty's recuperation with my marriage affairs," I said, kneeling and offering her a bowl of medicine. But today, without you, I could not have completed this plan. The Empress Dowager took the bowl and asked, "The Crown Prince did not marry you. Do you hate him so much that you would drive him to his death?" I lowered my eyes. "It is not like that. He is no longer in my heart." "Oh, then why? Is it because he once tried to poison Prince Su?" "Your Majesty is asking what you already know. I was raised by you." I blinked at her. "The Crown Prince, because of Song Qingwan, no longer has any childhood affection for me. If he ascends the throne, my brother and I will have no future. Enough, the situation is settled. I will consider this a favor to Prince Su," she said, her eyes narrowed. "But there are few men in this world who would like a calculating woman like you. In the future, Prince Su might." I knew all of this. In my past life, Xie Huaishu had been wary of me for most of our lives. I was tired of that kind of life. I lowered my gaze. "I have no intention of marrying into the royal family." A eunuch soon came to report that the priest's elixirs contained no poison, but they did contain the juice of the hellebore plant. The emperor had a habit of drinking ginseng wine. If he took this elixir at the same time, it would greatly deplete his energy and blood. The Empress Dowager smiled and asked, "I had the physician mix in those few pills with hellebore, but not the entire imperial hospital is my person. How did you know the emperor's health was failing?" I pursed my lips and said softly, "I once heard you say that the emperor is busy with court affairs and has a harem of 3,000. Since ancient times, few emperors have been in good health. I thought that even if the physicians diagnosed him, they would not dare to speak up. Today was the perfect opportunity to bring it to light under the pretext of the elixir." Hearing this, a smile appeared on the Empress Dowager's sickly face. "You are not yet married, yet you speak of such things without shame." That night, the emperor executed the priest and issued an edict to depose Xie Huaishu as crown prince. But the edict had not yet been announced. The emperor had only imprisoned him in the inner palace. After helping the Empress Dowager with her medicine and seeing her to bed, I returned to my own chambers. As Xiaohong made my bed, she gossiped about the affairs of the Duke's residence. "The second miss has returned to the residence to await the birth of her child. She must have heard the news. The attendants say she has been selling her jewelry and valuables these past few days. I wonder if it is to bribe someone on the deposed crown prince's behalf. He is in the inner prison. How could she possibly bribe anyone under His Majesty's nose?" The smile on my lips froze. I ordered Xiaohong, "Have our people in the residence keep a close watch on her." The next day, as I had predicted, Song Qingwan, with a large sum of silver, disguised herself as a maid and fled the capital. She had made the same foolish mistake as in her past life. In that life, before General Huo went to war, he had left a squad of elite soldiers to escort the female members of his family back to the capital. But Song Qingwan, in her greed, had taken the family's wealth and fled alone. On her way back, the roads were littered with corpses. On a whim, she wrote a suicide note, intending to find a disfigured female corpse, dress it in her own clothes, and frame me. She never expected that it would become her own suicide note. Unfortunately, by the time I uncovered the truth in my past life, she was already dead. This time, I finally had my chance. With Xie Huaishu imprisoned, her escape was a serious crime. I did her a favor and had her sent to the inner prison to keep him company. Xie Huaishu never would have imagined that before. His imprisonment, he had done nothing to save himself, only trying to protect Song Qingwan by sending her to our residence. But the woman he had loved for 2 lifetimes had abandoned him at the first sign of trouble. Xie Huaishu demanded to see me. Eve refused. After a few days, he stopped causing trouble. The guards said he would often sit alone, muttering, "Those who betray me must die." They all said he had gone mad, daring to call himself Zhen the Royal, after the Empress Dowager's grand funeral. Prime Minister Liu could no longer wait. He sent a message to the traitor, ordering him to poison General Huo and seize control of the army. He intended to rescue Xie Huaishu, stage a coup, and force the emperor to abdicate. General Huo played along, having the traitor send a reply that the takeover was successful. He then led his army back to the capital. Just as they reached the city gates, my father, who had some military authority, led the city guard into the palace. My father had always been a timid and cautious man, yet he had taken such a risk at the Prime Minister's instigation, perhaps to save his beloved Song Qingwan, or perhaps to reclaim the wealth that had been within his grasp. Soon, news came from the inner prison. My father had rescued Xie Huaishu and Song Qingwan. He was still dreaming of becoming the future emperor's father-in-law. But then he saw Xie Huaishu plunge a longsword into Song Qingwan's chest. Even after she was dead, Xie Huaishu was not satisfied. He stabbed her several more times, until her body was a bloody mess. Blood splattered into his eyes, turning them crimson. He was like a madman. My father, horrified by the scene, fainted on the spot. After killing Song Qingwan, his next target would be me. He led his troops and stormed into the signing palace. As a member of the royal family, I was not permitted to go to the imperial tombs, so I was in the signing palace, mourning for the Empress Dowager. Zi Huaishu, on horseback, pointed his blood-stained sword at me. I should have known. You were reborn as well. Those who betray me must die. We were both just scheming against each other. I wanted to kill you as much as you wanted to kill me. How can you speak of betrayal? Fine, I will not hold the past life against you, he said, closing his eyes, his voice hoarse. If you submit to me, I can spare your life and your brother's. I couldn't help but laugh. You've gone completely mad, and you are offering to spare me. In our past life, I had an affair with Shi Yuan. I helped him build his power, not only to secure Song Yuan's position, but also so that one day he could kill you and take the power you cherish most. If you want to talk about who betrayed you the most, isn't it me? Zi Huaishu's eyes were bloodshot, as if they were about to drip blood. He leaped off his horse. Song Jinyuan, you are asking for death. The veins on his forehead bulged, his eyes wide with fury, as he charged at me with his sword. In the next instant, an arrow flew past my ear and lodged in his shoulder. He fell, and 2 more arrows pierced his body, pinning him to the ground. I looked down at him and laughed softly. Have you never heard of goading someone? In the distance, dust billowed, and the sound of iron hooves grew closer. I forgot to tell you. I helped General Huo find that traitor Shi a long time ago. The general should be on his way to rescue His Majesty now, I said, watching the last glimmer of hope in his eyes fade. In this life, you have lost completely. Suddenly, Xie Huaishu's eyes widened in terror, as if he had seen something. I looked up and saw Shi Yuan dismount. Radiating a murderous aura, he asked, "Why are you not at His Majesty's palace?" "That old man is not as important as you," Shi Yuan said, pulling me behind him. His gaze fixed on the blood-soaked Shi Huaishu on the ground. "He came here to kill you." Seeing him, Shi Huaishu looked as if he had seen a demon from hell, dragging his bloody body backward. He gritted his teeth and pulled the arrow from his shoulder. Shi Yuan's body blocked my view completely. I only saw a spray of blood in the air, splattering the brick ground. In a daze, I heard Shi Yuan's voice. He killed himself. The setting sun dyed the sky a bloody red. The coup was finally over. After today, the throne would belong to Shi Yuan. As dusk fell, he smiled and asked me, "He didn't think he could have another chance, did he?" "No, he was just terrified of you." Shi Yuan was a man who never expressed his feelings. When he wanted to marry me, he pulled me aside and seriously analyzed the pros and cons. He said my father was a traitor. If I didn't marry him, Song Yuan would be the son of a traitor and would have no future. I rested my chin on my hand and asked him seriously, "You really don't mind that I am a calculating woman? You should know that I approached you to use you to get rid of Xie Huaishu. Even if it was a scheme, out of so many people, you chose me," he said, a soft laugh escaping his throat. "If not for your schemes, I would have died at the hands of that assassin long ago." I smiled at him. "Then I will give you the chance to repay me with your life." I don't need you to give it to me, Shi Yuan said, a playful glint in his eyes. For my meritorious service in protecting the emperor, my father asked me what I wanted. I said, I wanted to marry you. Once the mourning period is over, the imperial edict will be sent to the Song residence. 3 years later, I was made empress. On our wedding night, Shi Yuan's fingertips brushed away the sweat-dampened hair from my forehead, his eyes flushed with desire. It was only a 3-year mourning period. Why did it feel like a lifetime? I wrapped my arms around his neck and leaned in, whispering in his ear, because you have me in your heart. It was not until late that I fell into an exhausted sleep. In my deep slumber, I dreamed of my past life. On the night I died, the palace was engulfed in flames and blood. Ziyuan stood before the main hall, his expression blank. He seemed to see me and smiled. I listened to you. I killed him. He laughed, and tears mixed with blood streamed from his eyes. I opened my eyes in a daze. Shi Yuan was gently wiping my tears. Why are you crying? When I didn't answer, he held me tightly and whispered, sleep now, my empress. I rested my head on his chest and suddenly murmured his name. Ziyuan. The moonlight shone on his handsome face, his eyelids fluttered, and he answered drowsily. I whispered in his ear, this life, let us live it well together. I slowly closed my eyes and heard his voice. He said, all right.